by day, I'm a drama teacher, and I have been for about 16 years, amongst other various different careers. I was a professional actor for a while. I was a Captain Starlight at the Royal Children's Hospital here. We have these Captain Starlights that do distraction therapy. So we're superheroes, and we go around the wards, and I would travel in our Captain Starlight spaceship, aka a truck. We'd travel around to different hospitals and use distraction therapy and improvisation and things like that. So I did that for about 5 years, and before that, to start with, I was a DJ. I had a disco radio show called Ed Dolista's Hyperdrive, which then moved to Ed Dolista's Disco Fever, and I did that for about, I think, 15 years on public radio, and that's actually what got me into doing my Indiana Jones podcast, because I had taken a break from, I was just getting really tired doing Saturday night radio. And, you never knew how many people were listening. And I'd usually do like a four-hour shift on Saturday nights. And I was thinking, I've heard of podcasting. I wonder if I can do, if I could do my disco show on a podcast. I mean, I could record it at any time I'd like. I wouldn't have to give up my Saturday nights, because I do amateur theater as well. And that's always, I'd have to take time off for that sort of thing. So I would do that. And I looked into it and thought, it's the complexities of getting licensed, licensing music and everything like that was a little bit too complex for me at the time. And then I was listening to the Force Cast. I'd listened to a lot on, and they started to talk about Indiana Jones. There was, I think, inklings of Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And I thought, hang on a second. That's exactly what I should be talking about, that, because I love Star Wars, but I love Indiana Jones. And I think, they shouldn't be talking about Indiana Jones. I should be. So I sent in a sort of like a demo, a little demo tape, I suppose, to them. And they really liked it. And as a result, I got to, host the IndyCast. And then we sort of kept going and building it up. And Mitch Halleck from the Raider.net contacted me going, oh, look, I do stuff on the radio.net. Do you mind if I contribute? And I said, of course. The more the merrier. And
right.
And that's where we are today.
Fantastic, man. So you started podcasts in the very early days, 2007, right?
That's correct. November, I think it was, maybe, don't quote me, November 16 or something like that. But it was pretty early on. A lot of people didn't know what podcasts were, or how did you, how do you listen to them? And in those days, it was really just, I think iTunes was the main source of podcasts. And we've been continuously going for what's that, 15, 16 years now. We used to, at the height, we were weekly, but we're all pretty time poor at the moment. So we moved, must have been about, I don't know, a few years after that, after Crystal Skull came out. And there was a bit of, I suppose, a lull in Indiana Jones news and merchandise and things like that. We went to a monthly schedule, but things are starting to ramp up a little bit more. Well, we haven't gone weekly again. Our monthly shows are, I think, longer than Lord of the Rings at this stage. The last one, I think, clocked in at like 4 hours and 19 minutes or something. It was like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of indie news out there at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. And when it comes to that episode that you guys do nowadays compared to back then, how many guests would you have at a given time?
Gosh, in the early days, I mean, they were very short episodes. I think, maybe about 10, 15 minutes, we do something. And then I got to, I think our first guest, official guest was John Rhys Davis when he came to Supernova in Australia, just in Melbourne. And I thought, well, I've got to go get him. So I got a really brief, like 5 or 8 minute interview with him. So he was our first guest that we got. Nowadays, with the great team that I have, we've got a vast array of creatives on a lot from the comic book world, from the Marvel days, also from Dark Horse as well. And then we've just had some, sadly, Mr. Ford, Mr. Spielberg, and Mr. Lucas and Mr. Williams haven't been on the show yet. I'm not sure whether that ever will happen, but we've had Sean Patrick Flannery and Karen Allen. Drew Struzan was on.
Great.
As well, and I think that was for our don't quote me, but maybe our 300th episode. We've had a lot of great talent, on screen and off screen, and also to do with the merchandise and artwork and everything like that. So we try and make it interesting. And I know Kevin Smith has said, when he mentioned, I think to Mitch mentioned to him that we would do Indiana Jones podcast. He goes, what do you guys talk about? There's only 4 movies. It's not like Star Wars or Harry Potter and everything like that. And go, well, it's amazing. We've got a great fan community, and there's a lot of everyone loves Indiana Jones. I think it's sort of like it's like that James Bond. I think it's a great sort of that great adventure that all the family can go and see as well. And everyone loves to talk about Indiana Jones, and they all have their favorite Indiana Jones movie or Indiana Jones moment. So it's not too difficult to get special guests on the show.
Yeah. And I think Indiana Jones, I mean, nothing against James Bond. I love James Bond films as well. I think what Indiana Jones has to offer is the historical aspect of it, the archaeology and all that stuff, while James Bond is more about cool gadgets and techie stuff. And people,
and I was just going to say, and the fact that James Bond is really this 6'2", all manly, womanizing, version of some spy, whereas Indiana Jones is really a bit of an everyman. He does get hurt. You do get him see, when he gets punched, he really gets punched. He doesn't win all the time. And I think that's what, he's still relatable, even though he's this hero character. There's an element that we can see in, from, maybe ourselves or our fathers or, our uncles or someone we know or, that we look up to.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what's going to be my next point as well, is that the vulnerability in Indiana Jones is unlike any other hero has. I think I'm not really a superhero fan per se, but the only Batman trilogy, the one by Christopher Nolan, that had vulnerabilities. I mean, it's nothing like Indiana Jones, like in terms of comedy and humor and adventure. But the whole film was an arc itself. Batman trilogy begins, Dark Knight Rises. Yep. And I think that's what connects with people. And it's so interesting that storytelling always has been, is, and always will be, people be able to relate to it if there are vulnerable characters. And, the films that don't do well, not all the time necessarily, but most of the time, are the ones where the vulnerability is not dug deep into characters as to what they're going through, why they're suffering. And that's what makes Indiana Jones exceptional. Of course, it's not deep, thought-provoking, philosophical character development, but still there is that relationship with the dad. Then there's a relationship with Short Round. Then, in the last Indiana Jones movie, Shia LaBeouf, his son character. And I would like to see how that plays in the next film, which kind of is a nice segue. Are you looking forward to it, aside being an Indiana Jones fan, based on what you have seen in terms of trailers and Super Bowl teasers?
Oh, look, absolutely. I, ever since Kingdom of the Crystal Skull came out and did, exceptionally well at the box office, I had assumed we'd be getting another Indiana Jones movie, maybe in 2 or 3 years, and then hopefully maybe one more, and then a final one. So we'd have, at least, 6 or 7 maybe Indiana Jones movies. It would be fantastic. Unfortunately, that was not the case. So since the announcement and then the shift in release dates, I think Harrison Ford in between that probably had a plane crash or two, that he's prone to have. We were a little anxious of whether we'd actually get another Indiana Jones film. So when things seem to be moving along, and the first trailer and the subsequent final trailer and extended spots and things like that, I'm very excited. I think it looks great. I like what I like about the Indiana Jones movies is they're all a little different. I mean, Raiders and and Last Crusade are sort of similar, not in tone, but in sort of structure. But Temple of Doom is quite different. You've got King of the Crystal Skull, which we just did a commentary track for that for the IndyCast, and I watched it on 4K with my wife, and then watched it again within the space of 18 hours or something like that. And I feel like that film has a totally different look, but there's a lot to like in that film. There's a lot of good thing, and it looks and the story beats are different. So I'm really excited to see where they take Indy in this next film. I think one of the lines Mutt says, to him, "What are you, about 80?" And the irony is that he is 80. He is 80 now when this new film is coming out. And I think he still looks like he can, tackle it with the Nazis, the de-aging effects that we've seen so far, albeit they're very brief and everything like that. They look pretty darn good. Yeah. I think the story, they've shown stuff, but you still don't know what exactly is it. Is there time travel? Is there this going on? Is that device? And I think it's like an Antikythera. I think that's, or however you pronounce it, to go back in time or what. I'm very excited to see it. And James Mangold is a cracker of a filmmaker. He's he's proven himself time and time again, and we've got John Williams back for another score. What's not to like?
Yeah. One thing, I talked about this to Mitch, I talked about this to everybody, but in Kingdom of Crystal Skull, one of the things that really that film didn't register with me when it came out. I'll be honest, right? And I think the thing that really ticked me off in the movie theater was, which a lot of people got pissed off about, was the refrigerator scene, right?
Yeah.
The nuclear bomb going off. And looking back at that 15 years ago, I was thinking about that when I was talking to Mitch, is that it's possible. What happens is we outgrow sometimes the things that we like, right? Between the first and the third Indiana Jones, there was an 8-year window. So there was always something coming up, and most of us in our 40s or 50s, we were still in that time frame in terms of mindset. But then the last film came out 18 years later. I wonder if most people didn't like it, including myself. I think I've concluded that was the reason I didn't like it, aside from other factors, is because I probably outgrew it and I didn't feel the same way about Indiana Jones as I did, when the first 3 came out. The one thing that I loved about the last film was the relationship, the father and son relationship. And it was such a shame that wasn't, extended beyond that, because that would have been really, really cool. And I think Shia LaBeouf, and if anything else who can not necessarily replace or fill in the same shoes, are Shia LaBeouf and Chris Pratt. I think there were some rumors too that Chris Pratt might, take on the whip. But yes. My point being saying is that I feel that Kingdom of Crystal Skull is a good film. Certainly in my books is still at the bottom of the list. And yes, for the excitement that I have of the next film, I hope that it still stays there, because I don't want it, the upcoming film to be like that. So really excited, man. And it seems very interesting. And I think the age factor is going to play a huge part in the humor. I really think so.
Well, I know that they played that up in Crystal Skull, and he was only about 65 at the time, and he's considerably young and agile, at that age, and they were playing it up a little bit. I don't know if they will play it up that much because the thing, yeah, exactly, in Crystal Skull, it was like the role reversal from Last Crusade, where he sort of became
Yeah,
Henry Jones Senior
yeah.
to Mutt's, younger Indy, and I did like that. I think for me, one thing, how you were saying, you had sort of maybe a bit of a disconnect after all those years, whereas I've been living Indiana Jones, and Star Wars, pretty much every day of the life. Something is Indiana Jones or Star Wars related in my life. And I think what I love about Crystal Skull is that it was the culminate, or well, how can I say it, is that it started off the podcast, and I think that will forever. I'll link that with making some amazing friends, that lifelong friends from the podcast, all those listeners. So that's really where I love King of the Crystal Skull. And to be honest, the fridge thing, I loved it. The cinematography in that scene, the wonderful Doomtown, the practical. A lot of people give Crystal Skull a lot of grief because of they're saying, oh, it's all CG, and oh, it's not like the old ways. And that whole Doomtown set was a model. Okay, so it was done practically. We had John Braver, who was one of the featured stuntmen in the opening sequence of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and a lot of that stuff was all practically done. And people again say to me, but it was all CG, and I'm going, well, what are they going to do? They're not going to go old school matte paintings, optical effects. That's how it is. ILM and Indiana Jones have always been on the cutting edge of visual effects, and those jungle scenes. Have you seen Black Panther? The jungle scenes in Black Panther are not fantastic. Kingdom of Crystal Skull, I think, gets a pretty good pass on that. And the fridge thing, he jumped out of a plane in a life raft and went over. So I think if I sort of go, what, I'm okay with that. I can suspend disbelief and just go along for the ride. I can understand how people maybe that was just a little bit too much. But for me, I quite enjoyed it, and I was just getting into the whole spirit of the adventure. If anyone can survive a nuclear bomb, I would think it would be Indiana Jones to come up with a way to do it. So,
I completely agree, because having seen Kingdom of Crystal Skull in the last, during COVID time, I completely changed my mind, because I think sometimes we as audience members, again, I think it's the fact of disconnect. We expect too much. And one thing that I loved, there was among many other things, two things that when I think of Indiana Jones and Kingdom of Crystal Skull that stand out for me is the overall cinematography, because it was Janusz Kaminski, who is Spielberg's, 30-year now partner.
Yes.
It was his first indie film, because before that, I think at least one of them was done by Dean Kundi, and I could be wrong. No.
Douglas Slocum.
Yeah. And the scene where there is that entire chase sequence on the Jeep by the cliff, like that is absolutely, to this day, it's amazing. And I watched that sequence over and over again. The timing that you had to get right, and just everything, lighting and the comedy, humor, action was top notch on. And I really like that film. I think Kingdom of Crystal Skull and Temple of Doom are similar in the terms of dark tones, if I'm not mistaken, at least for me. And Raiders and Last Crusade has that Nazi element. So this would be interesting. I mean, this obviously has Nazi element too, but I wonder how much they're going to play on the dark tone, if any, because Spielberg is not directing it, which I'm a huge fan of, but I'm kind of glad that he's not, and I think he's glad he's not either, because you end up repeating yourself over and over again.
Yeah, I think a fresh set of eyes on anything is, a good thing, and I think this is going to give it a bit of freshness and sort of a bit of a re-energize it, perhaps, and I think it's going to bring out, a little different performances in Harrison Ford as well. A new director. The director's going to have a few different ideas. Harrison is older and has got his ideas. and he's got a great cast around him as well. And I think the good thing with Dial of Destiny, the film, it's not all with Crystal Skull. It was pretty much all filmed in the United States. The jungle sequences were in Hawaii, whereas here they're going to that globe trotting. They're traveling all over the world again, and I'm just really excited to see what they have come up with. I haven't, as someone who does an Indiana Jones podcast, I'm trying. People send me things or rumors or this or that, and I'm trying to get as let's just say as spoiler free as I can be on an Indiana Jones podcast, because I know that when I went to see Return of the Jedi back in 1983, I had a friend who was American who had seen it, and in Australia it was released later, and he came to and he was sitting next to me, and every few minutes he go, "Oh, Jabba the Hutt's going to get strangled by this. Oh, this is what happens this," and it just ruined the experience for me. So I don't want that. For the last Harrison Ford led Indiana Jones, I don't want that to be too ruined. So that's why I'm flying over to America to see it as quickly as I can before I get any of the spoilers.
That's fantastic, and it's sad at the same time. And
I know.
I know exactly how that feels. I mean, forget about spoiling. I'm not even a fan of, when even in a household, when you're watching a movie and there's questions and there's commentary, and if you're so immersed into a film, it just ruins everything.
Oh my gosh.
Sometimes you just have like an actor has to be in a character to pull a performance. As audience members, we have to be completely immersed and not to feel that it's a fake world, as whether it's drama or adventure.
Absolutely.
One thing I discovered yesterday, there was an article on Variety. I mean, I just want to get your take on it. So I don't remember the exact dates of the release. I think Indiana Jones is June 28th or June 30th or July.
It's June 30th that it comes out. So I think in the States it might come out, a day earlier. In the UK, I think it comes out June 28th. So 2 days earlier.
Yeah. So on June 9th, Transformers new film comes out. And then July 14th, MI7 comes out. And there did this whole article, I think it was Variety or Hollywood Reporter, that how maybe it was neither, maybe it was something else. I'm just trying to mix up. Anyways, the point was that the film Indiana Jones 5 is being released 2 weeks in the crunch time between MI7 and Transformers, whichever number that is. And they're both huge franchises, especially MI7.
Yes.
Obviously, Indy itself is a massive franchise too. Do you feel it's gonna suffer in any way especially with the audience of MI7, because mainly like older audience, just like Top Gun, that is going to take away from Indiana Jones audience?
Look, it certainly might. I mean, I feel like the Mission Impossible franchise has taken over where the James Bond, of old used to be. And I'm certainly more excited for the Mission Impossibles than I am for the current James Bonds, or maybe the next one, whatever it form with the new James Bond it'll be. I don't know. Hopefully there's room for all of them, because I know that there's a Flash that is coming out, I think the week before.
Is it?
Indy 5, yes. So, and that's got, the buzz for that is off the charts. And of course, you've got Michael Keaton, another, classic character from 1989. I mean, it was Michael Keaton as Batman and Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford in 89. And they're back again. Who knew? All those years later. So, yeah, I think in Indiana Jones will have the legs to keep going. And again, maybe the people who don't go see Mission Impossible would go, those maybe older people, maybe the older demographic might go to see an Indiana Jones movie, like those grandmas and grandpas, I think probably would go see an Indy movie as opposed to a Mission Impossible movie. So I would imagine it would do pretty well. And I think it's going to have long legs, this movie. And I think it deserves to. I think it deserves to do well based on everything that I've heard about it, and given it's Harrison Ford's last foray as the character until he signs away his digital likeness and they just do digital face replacements on it. I'm sure that'll happen at some. I'm sure Disney have got a plan about that. And why wouldn't you, to hold on to his likeness? I hope it does well, and I think it will. But it is a pretty crowded marketplace, and if 1989 has shown us, things. Ghostbusters 2 didn't do as well as expected in that year. Star Trek 5 did not do nearly as big business as the previous film in that year of 1989. I'm pretty sure Indiana Jones will prevail. Hopefully it'll be Indy, the Flash, and Ethan Hunt all riding high at the box office for a long time.
Kind of going off topic from Indy, one thing that I find, well, it's kind of connected to Indy. Everybody from little kids, right? Like my kids, people that you see online, to the oldest person there is, everybody knows Tom Cruise, right?
Yes.
He's just become he's the only person I think that every generation knows about. And anytime I talk to anyone, like I have a friend who's also my cinematographer for the films. He's a huge fan of Christopher Nolan, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he has a film coming up, Oppenheimer.
That's
right. And he told me the other day, last week, he's like, I'm more excited about MI7 than I am for Oppenheimer. I find that interesting, that how Mission Impossible. I mean, I remember when it came out in 1996. And then it tanked with the second one, and the third one kind of revived it. It just, film after film, it's one of those rare franchises, if not only franchise, where it just keeps getting better and better and better. And are you excited about MI7? And obviously there will be a cliffhanger because part 1 to Dead Reckoning, and there's going to be part 2. How
my gosh,
are you? Go on.
Of course I am. I remember going to see Mission Impossible in the cinemas in 96, and we couldn't get it sold out, so we had to go we went to the cinema. We had to go back the next day, and I loved it from the first. What I love, because I wasn't that au fait with the original TV series. They filmed the second series, the 1980s series, which still had Peter Graves in it in Australia. So I watched that second series, and I just love it was Brian De Palma who did the first one, I think, wasn't it?
Yep.
And I love the opening credit, this is like a TV show. Hang on a second, where they had all the bits from later on, and I think, this is fantastic. And the score was great and everything like that. And I got more excited. I wasn't as big a fan of the John Woo one. The J.J. Abrams third one I thought was really good. And then it just started, getting better and better. And it's because of whether you love him or hate him, Tom Cruise. What I really admire about him is his work ethic and his commitment to doing that. And in fact, the other day I teach drama and DT and in digital technologies, and we're talking about how you have to plan for a project and things like that. So I showed my students they've got that 8-minute video of the current one where he's driving off the cliff to go into. And I was saying that one thing I've got to say though is they obviously they've got to digitally replace that bridge with something, because why would he be driving off? So I'm really interested in that. But my students were absolutely gobsmacked, and we'll talk. And then we show the video of him hanging on the side of the plane and how they digitally remove that. And there's a lot to be excited for, because this stuff is real. I think that's what's really exciting about it. And what are they going to do? And often those stunts that they do show are just like the opening gambit before even more. So. I think that's going to do huge numbers, and I think James, the producers, the what are they, Cubby Broccoli or whoever they are they
Christopher McGuire?
Oh no, I'm talking about the James Bond people. Are probably a little bit anxious as to what, or thankful that the end of Mission Impossible is in sight. I think because I'm very excited for it. Very excited.
And I think after Mission Impossible 3 came out, I don't remember the years. Because it had the one of the most amazing antagonists, Philip Seymour
Hoffman, yes,
yeah, and the way he played all that, and then I think and then became an arc from Mission Impossible 3 all the way up to now, right? And if you see Mission Impossible, I think Casino Royale was the first one with what's his name, Daniel Craig.
Yes.
I just watched it recently on a flight, and I was blown away that how much of a story there was in there. I completely forgot it was not. I mean, there was such a massive arc in that film, and I think they learned that from Mission Impossible because before that it was all like action sequences here, action sequences there, a little bit of dialogue,
a few witty remarks and a quip here, and yes.
And Sam Mendes, I think he directed 2 of them, who directed American Beauty in 1917. He really took it up a notch. And I still watch James Bond films, but the level of excitement for MI7, I'm not sure if you read how they showed the first 22 minutes at one of the CinemaCons, I think, or comic, I think CinemaCon. Like I don't want to. Like, you've read what it's about, right? The first 20 minutes.
I no, I didn't. I've been
then I won't say it.
That's okay.
I won't say it, but I was kind of regretting the fact that I read it, but it doesn't really give it away. But the first 20 minutes that they talked about, I mean, knowing that it's Tom Cruise doing that, it's probably going to be more insane than anything he's ever done to some degree. And I'm so excited. I mean, this guy is just anything that he does, like all these little videos that pop up on, promoting the film, or he comes on like a late night show. I think James Gordon's late night show, he came on and he played Pumbaa at the Lion King.
That's right, yes.
In the UK. He's just, I don't know what it is, man. The guy is like super talented. Like he can pull off anything and everything you can imagine.
It just shows, if you're committed and have good people around you and believe that you can do something. I mean, my gosh, I mean, isn't there? Aren't they going into space for something?
Yeah.
Macquarie and him are going into, I don't doubt that at all. It's pretty amazing what he can do. I mean, it helps to have a huge budget and production company and everything like that. But good on him for actually doing it and not just doing face replacements and blue screen, or green screen work. Because it makes it's more compelling for the audience, because if you believe that they're actually in some sort of peril, then you're going to be along for the ride, as opposed 100%. To being Kurt Russell surfing down a really horrendous, like in Escape from LA. That's probably not a good example. What about Pierce Brosnan? There you go, surfing. It must be surfing effects that are really bad, because when Pierce Brosnan was surfing in was that Tomorrow Never Dies? I can't remember which one it was.
Yeah, it was.
It's just, I could get. I'm a Roger Moore James Bond, because that's who I grew up with. So
same here.
I don't mind those. I quite like that. Hopefully, actually, the next James Bond goes back to a few more gadgets and maybe is, I don't know. I'd like to see it a little bit more, not camp, but a little bit more lighthearted. But who knows what will happen? Everything's dark these days.
I think the coolest gadget, if you want to call it a gadget, was the first James Bond movie that I saw was The Spy Who Loved Me. Yes. And that underwater car. I mean, that's the first thing.
Yeah, the Lotus Esprit. That yes. Yeah. That was very cool.
And going back to Tom Cruise, one thing about him among everything else is the guy, at least it appears that way, because if you had an ego, you wouldn't be able to pull off all these things that you do. I don't think when it comes to work, at least, he just leaves the ego behind, and that's what becomes like a team effort. And the great thing about Tom Cruise now, it's like, we were talking about that when you're watching something and you wonder if it's practical effects or CGI. Yeah. If tomorrow Tom Cruise did something that's green screen, because we have become or deep fake or whatever, we become so accustomed to him doing real stuff, we'll believe that it's real. That's what kind of, legacy he's creating for himself, that he's not doing
Yes.
anything that's fake.
That's an interesting thought. That's right. He can just phone it in from his home studio now, and he doesn't have to do it again. But I don't think he will.
Oh, you
It's
won't.
amazing. Hopefully, I was thinking the other day, actually watching that, is how it's amazing how the Academy Awards don't honor stunt people. I just cannot understand how it's such an integral part of most movies, yet they don't acknowledge it. I don't know why, but anyway. Hopefully it'll get
Well, I mean, I have a theory for that, but it's just a theory. I feel just like in any other time period, there's always that, whether people like admit it or not, there's always this class system, right?
Mhm.
There is, and I don't think stunt people are looked upon in that way. That, suit and making $20 million per movie and stuff like that. I genuinely feel, even though it shouldn't be like that, because art
Mhm.
is art, there's no, exception to that. And I also feel now, I think things are turning with the most recent Academy Award victory of Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Mhm.
More movies are now, I'm noticing, are coming out, and I think Hollywood is kind of pushing it too, because everybody's fatigued with the superhero movies and the same old franchise, and they're trying to push in now, or maybe I'm over looking into it too much, what happened in the 90s with Miramax, Pulp Fiction, all those independent houses came in.
Mhm.
And I feel now we're in the very, very early stages of that, because people get tired, right? Like, people want new stuff. And I really hope that that old cinema, is revived, where it's about deep emotions, where there's about character development. And it doesn't have to be, look, even a superhero film can have that, right?
Oh,
But the
look at
only film that
Christopher
was able
Reeve's
to,
Superman. My gosh. You
yeah,
know.
and the Batman trilogy with Christopher Nolan, like,
Mhm.
that, to me, I don't consider a superhero film at all. Like, I just don't, because it's not about a superhero. It's just about an ordinary man, in a costume, going through all these things in
Yep.
three different films. And I really hope that comes back, because I think I'm craving for it. And audience, I think, if they're given a little bit of taste here and there, they'll jump back into it.
Absolutely. Well, we'll see. I think with I'm a DC guy, not a Marvel guy. And I think that I quite liking the way that the direction that DC has been heading.
Yeah.
I was a huge fan of Zack Snyder's Justice League. I think that's absolutely amazing. I personally loved everything about it. But I like where they're heading, and I think that's just a bit too much. I think everyone's getting the idea. Okay, let's not release one every three weeks. Let's spread them out a bit, make them more. I did read a thing that Kathleen Kennedy was saying about the Star Wars films, that they don't work to deadlines. Let's release them when they're ready, and make them a bit more of an event like the original
Yeah.
Star Wars films. And we were happy to wait 3 years between each film, or you know the first Indiana Jones movies. So, and then a little bit longer between
Yeah.
Temple of Doom and Last Crusade. People will wait, and if they're good films, people will come and watch them. So,
I mean, I was gonna say that about Star Wars too, because now there's like every few months there's a new Star Wars series on Disney Plus, right? And it's like, when you eat lunch, and if you eat dinner right away, you're not gonna enjoy your dinner, right? You have to have that break period, the appetite. I mean, look at Avatar. There was like, what, 11-year time, or 13 years
yeah, that was
break?
2009, I think,
9.
wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
13 years break, and look what it did. Right? I mean, there are other factors obviously at play. It has to be a good film too.
Mhm.
But it's just that people, there's this time period, that sweet spot, that studios need to discover. You can't be too late, like Indiana Jones 3 and 4, where there's like 17-year old
Yes.
gap, and you can't be too soon. You have to give people things in different, as if you're having different meals in a day. And I just feel that's happening with Star Wars too, even though Kathleen Kennedy said that. Maybe they realize that now it's going to play down the road. But in the last, when did The Force Awakens come out? 2015, 2014?
Oh gosh, it would have been 2015, I think, then
Yeah.
2017, then 2019, I think it was, or
So
thereabouts.
in 8 years, we've had 3 films, and I don't even know how many series, 3, 4 series, and different seasons of
Um,
those series. Mandalorian,
True.
um, Boba
For
Fett.
me, for me, what I think with those though, the series feel a little bit different to the movies in what
Yeah,
I that's something I can get excited to watch every week, and I certainly after the last season of The Mandalorian, I feel like there's a bit of a um there's a bit of a void in my viewing because I really I felt for the the episodes as it went along, it got better and better and better and better, and then going, wow, that was fantastic, and then it's gone. And same with Andor, which what I liked about Andor, if we're all over the shop in this conversation, I apologize.
fine.
It
No,
was
that's
the
okay.
different it was a different sort of Star Wars and the slower pace and everything like that. So I felt, that was different enough from maybe, the Mandalorian, and the Book
Sure.
of Boba Fett had its good moments. It had its, not so good moments, but I'm just one of these, maybe I'm not as discerning. I don't know, but I'm just happy to see, some new worlds and fun Star Wars. And, I try and channel the 7-year-old and not the 52-year-old. Otherwise I'd just be, oh, look at that's not the way I would do it, or that's rotten, or he wouldn't
No,
do that.
it's not about how anybody else would do it. I think and I agree with you. Like, there is that, like, for example, if they made, I'm just trying to think which movie would it be. If they took a lot of movies from like Stranger Things, right?
Mm-hmm.
They kind of reinvented Spielberg 80s, but
Yep.
with the original flavor, right? And my problem is not that certain films are being made the way they are. Actually, I've heard Andor, is it Andorra you said?
Andor,
Andor. I've heard that's a great Star Wars series.
it
I've
is.
heard from so many people, and I should watch that before. But my only thing is the timing. Maybe maybe I'm a rare exception, or maybe they have to go with majority, obviously, and they always obviously have these surveys and data that they do to
Mhm.
figure out what kind of audience appetite there is. I just feel that what they do with all these series, whether it's Star Wars or superhero or Indiana Jones or anything else, and even Stranger Things, I think I'm burned out by Stranger Things too. Like, I think it should have been over at the end of season 3, period. You
Mhm.
just need to, because it always becomes about money at the end, right? Which, like, I understand too. It's a business. I run a business too. Um, but it just has to be some sweet spot. And maybe they're realizing it. Maybe Kathleen Kennedy, like you said, has, the fact that she said that. And I'm really excited about, we're talking about Kathleen Kennedy and we're talking about Lucasfilm. Young Indiana Jones. There's a lot of talk about that. That came out in the
Mhm.
90s and now they're thinking about reviving it after the film. I'd be open to that. What do you
Mhm.
think?
Oh, look, I love the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles,
It
or
was
the Adventures
amazing.
of Young Indiana Jones. I It was different to what I was expecting, like I think most people were, but I like the mix of historical information and adventure. And I was sort of probably geared more to the Sean Patrick Flannery adventures because he was nearer to my age, I think, so I could connect with him more than the Corey Carrier young Indy. But I think that would be a fantastic way to revisit. I'd certainly recommend, if people listening or watching who haven't seen the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, if they can get them on on DVDs, the supplemental materials on those DVDs, where each episode, he'd meet maybe a historical Albert Schweitzer or T.E. Lawrence or some famous character from history. The documentaries would then go, little 30-minute documentaries would talk about the history of that, and it's fascinating. So I really like the concept, and I think that would be a great way to keep Indiana Jones going. Certainly an animated series would be I think a no-brainer. There's that wonderful proof of concept by I think it's Patrick Schoenmaker, if I'm not mistaken, who's done an animated Indiana Jones like opening, and you're going, wow, this would be fantastic, because I don't know if you've watched any of the Star Wars Bad Batch that they've been doing.
I've seen pieces here and there with my kids, but yeah, I know what you're talking about.
It's really good. The storytelling is fantastic. Every frame looks like you could print it and put it up on the wall. It looks like Ralph McQuarrie has his hands all over it. You forget it's animation. And I think it would be great to see an Indiana Jones adventure done in, maybe a bit of a stylized way. I think it would be wonderful, but I suppose that we'll see how Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny goes at at cinemas.
But you know what would be really cool in terms of Indiana Jones animated series? Drew Struzan style. That would be cool. Like, just the way, I mean, I'm not talking about like, the way he paints the real character, like just the artistry, the texture, the feel of it. If they did that with a combination of computer technology, I think fans will dig it. I would love it. I think that'd be super cool, and it would give it a completely original look than anything else. Kind of like how Spider-Verse is.
Oh yes, absolutely, and certainly. I don't know if you've watched the latest. Only dropped on Star Wars Day, May the 4th. Star Wars Visions, the second one.
Yes, I did see it.
There's some really interesting one that looks like it's all painted. There's some really interesting things that are pushing the boundaries, and I think why not? Each episode could be a different, a different palette, or from a different country, or wherever his adventure is, or something like that. Who knows? I do think we will, though, see more Indiana Jones after this. I know that Disney
100%.
It's not like Disney are going to go, okay, that's it. We won't do that anymore. I think they will in a few years.
Yeah, I mean, they're saying they won't, because they don't want fans to be turned off for the film. But at the end of the day, understandably so, it's a business, it's art, but it's business, and they have to make money, and that's just the bottom line, and there's nothing wrong with that. For Indiana Jones and Dial of Destiny, I mean, you talked about how you're going to LA. Are you planning to go on the, sometimes I think the film comes out on Friday, but sometimes they release it 2 days before on a Wednesday, like I think they're doing that with Guardians of the Galaxy this week. Are you planning to go on like the very first show of, or are you trying to get like into like an advanced screening, if there is any?
Well, I'm hopeful to be there in LA for the advanced screening, or the premiere that they have, with the red carpet and everything like that. So that is the plan. Whether that plan works out or not, it doesn't matter, because it's all like I was saying to my wife when we were booking this, it's sort of like Indy with the leap of faith, standing there in Last Crusade. We've got a book, but we don't know whether it's going to happen or not. But you know what? If it doesn't, we're in LA. We're going to be doing lots of fun things. We're going to be catching up with friends, and then I'm going to catch up with Mitch Halleck, from who from the Raider, from the IndyCast, of course, and Mitch and Ed's Excellent Adventure that I do my show with, and we're going to be catching up, seeing it. He believes that it should be screening in IMAX at least 2 days early. So we're going to be going to see it there, and then I'll probably see it one more time in New York with some of my other fellow IndyCasters who we're going to catch up with while we're on the East Coast. So I'm looking forward to it. As I say, it's going to be the most expensive movie ticket I've ever paid for, but it's going to be fun, I think.
I don't think it's the most expensive movie ticket you ever paid. It's the most expensive movie experience. I think that's the key. And I
suspect it's actually going to be priceless. So it probably actually works out okay.
I feel that being in LA, here's my prediction, you will most definitely be able to watch it before it comes out, 100%. Because
I hope
you will connect to somebody through somebody that may have tickets, or you might be able to
yes.
get a connection at Paramount or something. It will definitely happen. It's LA, so as long as you go there, magic will happen.
That's right. I've heard it's where dreams are made. So
Yeah, it
let,
is.
let our hotel view has got the view. We go no, we're getting the view of the Hollywood sign. I mean, you've got to squint, I think, and have binoculars. But hey, who knows what's going to happen? I think I'm just very excited to be there. It's been a long time. I think it's been 20. It'll be 22 years since I've been spending time in LA. So it'll be good to head back there and see what's changed and if
Yeah.
anything, or it's going to be
Well,
great.
Chinese Man's Theater, is that still around, right?
Yes. In fact,
I
when I was there last, AI was showing Steven Spielberg's AI.
ah
So I remember seeing that on the marquee everywhere. So,
I
and the
saw
Dolby, wasn't even there.
yeah, I saw War of the Worlds there.
Ah, yes.
They had it wasn't a premiere, but they had Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes come in, and then Tom Cruise did a Q&A at the end. But that movie theater, I hope, I mean, it's not IMAX, but just because of the history that movie theater
Mm,
has, um, I hope you get to see it there as well, because that would be
yes.
I mean, it's nothing groundbreaking from inside unless things have changed. I mean, that was like 16 years ago, but just the experience of on that street, being in that environment. I mean, you even if they don't advertise a small movie there, everybody will walk in just because it's Chinese
Yes.
Man's Theater.
Oh yes, and I'll do exactly what I did last time was look for C3PO and R2D2's footprints outside the front. Hopefully they're still there because I remember watching that over and over on the Making of Star Wars documentary that I had, and looking at all the Walk of Fame. But yeah, there in the Dolby Theater, there's going to be a lot of good stuff to see there. So hopefully I'll be able to bump into Mr. Spielberg or Mr. Lucas while I'm there. Hopefully I won't bump into John Williams because I don't want to bump into him. We want him for around for many years to come to keep
Yeah,
scoring. But
yeah,
that's another exciting thing to be looking forward to is John Williams, final Indiana Jones score. So
yeah. You know what you should do? I'm sure that week they're gonna have all these late night shows, Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy
yes,
Fallon, Stephen Colbert. They're gonna have guests coming in. You should try to get into that or wait outside or something, just try to, because you
I
might
think
get to
so.
see Harrison Ford.
That would be good. I have met Harrison Ford once before. When we were it was the opening of Firewall. I think that was in maybe 2006, if memory serves me right. And I waited. They had a bit of a red carpet, and he walked the red carpet, and I was absolutely terrified. But I got to have a quick, said thank you very much. Got to shake his hand, and then he moved on, and I was like terrified. But it was a wonderful experience. So who knows? We'll certainly keep an eye out. Hopefully the writers' strike has all been sorted out by then,
Oh,
and
it
those late
will.
night shows will be we'll be back on track. We did get to see when I was last in New York in 2017, 2016. We did get to see the Late Show with Stephen Colbert, which was a great fun experience. But no Harrison Ford. I think we got Mark Ruffalo. That was as good as it got for us.
I think you're talking about your Harrison Ford meeting story. I think nothing gets better than, no offense to you, than Mitch's story of meeting
Yeah. Oh
Harrison
yes,
Ford.
with the cat.
I
Yes.
think that was just, and the way he actually spoke about it on the podcast, and the way he told that story, it was like a 10-minute long story.
Yeah.
And it was just amazing what happened with him. I think that was just amazing. It was cool. It was really cool.
Yeah, it's the only way. It makes sense when you know Mitch, for that to happen. You go, yeah, that'll be right.
Yeah. Just lastly, man, because you guys have IndyCast, have you tried approaching Paramount to see if you guys can get some sort of advance tickets?
We know we've got some friends at Lucasfilm. So and one of our early correspondence, who was the official, unofficial IndyCast fan club president, Dan Z, has he's basically gone on to great success with his podcast. He started with us. He's doing Coffee with Kenobi, and he writes for StarWars.com. Has authored some Star Wars books, and he's our number one contact. And we've got wonderful Laird Malamed, who is the ex sound editor on the Young Indiana Jones series, and is has good ties there. So we're all hopeful, but either way, I'm going to be a little bit more like Mike Wazowski, who's just excited to be there. Even though his face is covered by the barcode on the magazine, I'm just happy to be there and catch up with all my good friends.
One last bit. What's the audience for your IndyCast like nowadays? Like, how many people tune in, and where can people find your podcast?
Yeah, so we're still. I mean, Indiana Jones is a bit of a niche, sort of topic. It's not as necessarily popular as Star Wars or the Harry Potters. But look, I'm really proud of. We've got a really wonderful audience in the thousands, which is fantastic. In our I'm not going to say heyday, but in our early days, we're in the top I think top 30 podcasts in the United entertainment podcasts on iTunes in the United States, which is crazy to think about. And we're still doing really well, which is great. You can find us at the IndyCast.com. The best thing to do, you can listen to us directly from there, or you can just iTunes or your favorite podcast aggregator. So that's been going really well. And then we've got Mitch and my show with Mitch, and that's Mitch and Ed's Excellent Adventure, which we started over COVID because often Mitch and I would just talk, and you probably get the sense from my conversation here, I like to go on tangents, so I apologize for that. But we're at Mitch and Ed's Excellent Adventure on YouTube, where we talk about Indiana Jones, PHX 1138, pop culture movies from the 70s and 80s. The more obscure, the better. So
fantastic, man. I would love to have you on again, talk about some other stuff. And thank you so much for joining in. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to Indiana Jones 5, of course. And maybe we can do an episode sometime after the release, when you're back in Australia. That'd be really cool to do.
Oh, I'd love to. Thanks so much for inviting me on. I've had a great time.
Thank you so much. Likewise, man. You have a great day.
Cheers. Bye-bye.